Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Monday, February 2nd, 2026 episode of the Marco Jure Show. Thank you for tuning in to today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best hour of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. First of all, happy Groundhog's Day to everyone out there listening. For those of you that may get your climate patterns from a woodchuck, I guess Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow, so we need to brace ourselves for another 6 more weeks of winter. You know, parts of Florida right now are getting lows at the evening at, I think, low 30s, high 20s in some parts. I saw it's absolutely ridiculous this is happening, but we're in for a very, very cold winter ahead of us, folks. So bundle up. Obviously, if you're in parts of the country that are experiencing still power outages and what have you, please be safe out there, and please check up on loved ones and, of course, your elderly neighbors if at all possible. Anyways, folks, I've got a great show lined up for you, of course, great articles, and we're going to go over all of them in great detail. But first, let's talk about what's happening on the Epstein front. We had this rush of files released on Friday after the show, and I really want to break this down for everybody because this is very important that we get to the bottom of this and kind of break this down, of course. And again, some of you might be thinking to yourselves, well, you know, this is great, get everything out in the open. And I agree, we should have everything out in the open. That should have been out in the open on December 19th. And it wasn't. And yet they're still sitting on millions of files, we're told at least. And by the way, it's been very disquieting as of late, what we're seeing right now, that this was withheld from us. Very appalling, very difficult to read through some of these emails. And this is really indicative of our elite class, I'd have to say. Right? This is a guy who knew various world leaders. He hung around with these people. He hung around with various elite in the United States as well. People all over the world, too, by the way. Most people forget that part. But this is very disturbing. We need to break this down. We need to get to the bottom of this, of course. And there are pictures showing some, I guess, evil, disgusting things, possibly relating to children. We need to know what's going on here, folks. We need to get to the bottom of this. And for some reason, we're not getting to the bottom of this. And I don't understand why we're not getting to the bottom of this. That's the biggest problem with all this. And, I'll try to keep this as PG as possible. But as, much of these documents have been released where the evidence of the perpetrators, the criminals, are redacted, to me is disgraceful of the DOJ right now. It's absolutely embarrassing that they think we're this stupid. But anyone, you listen to anyone in the mainstream media, any of these people, these talking heads that told you, look the other way, right? It's just another hoax, this Epstein file case. It's the Democrats. It was just him and Ghislaine. He's dead. She's in jail. Or, I got it from a good source that there is no client list. Why you focused on Epstein? All these things were told. Lies. When you look through some of these files as of late. Now, after seeing what we've seen, again, I no longer trust a word of these people, what they're saying to us. Anyone that told you look the other way, obviously, is a grade A liar. They're a fraud. And again, we have a right to know what's happening here. We should demand justice for these victims, living and deceased, by the way. And there are more deceased than there are living. That just brings up another a flurry of questions. What's going on here? What's really happening here? I want to play for you, though, Assistant Attorney General Todd Blanche. He was on the State of the Union with Dana Bash over the weekend. And I want you to hear his response when he was asked about any further charges being made in this Epstein case. So I want you to take a listen to clip 1 right now.
Is the Department of Justice considering bringing any additional charges here? Well, look, I can't talk about any investigations, but I will say the following, which is that in July, the Department of Justice said that we had reviewed the files, the quote, Epstein files, and there was nothing in there that allowed us to prosecute anybody. We then released over 3.5 million pieces of paper, which the entire world can look at now and see if we got it wrong. And so it's not performative, and I respectfully disagree with that statement. We were ordered to do so by Congress and then by the President of the United States, and that's what we did. And let me, I said it on Friday, this Justice Department, the FBI, DHS, we have gone after more sex traffickers, more child pornographers, more men who have done harm to children and young women than any administration in history. And so we need to separate those two ideas, the fact that there's the Epstein files and whether there's anybody there that we can go after.
Okay, I've heard enough of him. Yeah, I guess we can determine if you got it wrong, can't we? I mean, again, I have to look at this and say, what is he talking about here? Right? I mean, is he really going to tell us that prosecutors looked at 3.5 million pages of these documents that they released and said, well, shipshape, nothing here. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. Okay, Mr. Blanche, well, let's look at this article in the New York Post that I have. Released over the weekend. It says, Robin Leach allegedly strangled young girl at a sex party. Now, for those of you that don't know, he was a British-American journalist. He's now deceased. Said to have been spotted at several orgies, as the article claims. Are we to believe that nothing incriminating happened at any of these locations with a notorious sex offender and pedophile, folks? All right, let's move on. Let's go to something else then. Again, these are people that have not been found guilty. I'll just tell you that much. But the idea that these claims are being brought forward and nothing is being looked at all, nothing to corroborate any of this, millions of pages, nothing? I find that hard to believe. Let's look at this email from Epstein to a redacted email. It says here, this is what he writes, where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video. There's no follow-up to expound, but it clearly means that Epstein was sent a video of someone being tortured, right? I think we all can agree on that. Not good enough for you? How about this one? June 30th, 2014, an email to Jeffrey Epstein. I give you permission to kill him. He is apparently with Olga. He lied to you and he lied to me. And Epstein responds, no one will lie to you or get away with it from me. So are we to believe that people are telling Jeffrey Epstein to kill people? And we have no one else we can look at? No one else we can build a case on? Again, folks, I find this very, very difficult to believe. By the way, I'm just going through a couple of these emails. There are millions of these files out there. Again, they go on talking about rape, ritualistic sacrifices being made, babies being dismembered, and disgusting. I can't even repeat this stuff to you. What's being said about that? Again, he's talking to doctors about pushing transgenderism on 3-year-olds. Ghislaine was talking about recruiting a girl, not a woman, a girl, for modeling. But instead this girl was sold into sex slavery and then tortured. And then in the same email, it says, I'm going to read it to you. Prince Andrew was an accessory to her death, as he tortured her and me to force her murder. Now, again, whether this is a minor that Ghislaine was referring to or a woman doesn't really matter. This young female was tortured and killed. And people are talking about this. Folks, this is not normal behavior. This is disgusting. And is there no justice for any of these people? Again, it goes on. Here's another extremely disturbing one. I didn't realize Bush raped him too. Anyway, the issue is we don't know who this is, thanks to our DOJ. It's very shocking to see all this stuff. And the idea that we can't figure out who these people are or build cases, I don't buy it. Again, Todd Blanche is again asked if there are any new cases, new investigations that could come about. Maybe they got something wrong. Who knows? Well, let's listen to what he has to say.
Well, look, the way that we start many of our federal cases is because we hear tips from civilians or from others in the community. But my point in saying that was slightly different. It was that the review that we had done before concluded that there was no such information, and that's where we remain for what we've seen and what we've released from the Epstein files. Now, there's a lot of correspondence, there's a lot of emails, there's a lot of photographs, there's a lot of horrible photographs that appear to be taken by Mr. Epstein or people around him, but that doesn't allow us necessarily to prosecute somebody.
Okay, let's stop for a second. Horrible photographs. What does that mean, a horrible photograph? If there's a horrible photograph, does that mean something illegal is happening? Does that mean someone's been hurt? Someone's been tortured? Someone's being raped? We don't know because they won't share it with us. Why is there a picture of Prince Andrew leaning over a woman? It looks like a young woman. I don't know. But regardless, a woman on the floor. And she's prone. And there's several pictures of this, and she's redacted from it. Why is she redacted from it if it's all, ship-shape good? Everything's okay. There's nothing else out there, according to Todd Blanche. Why are we redacting then? Why don't they let us know who he's speaking to? If everything's okay. Again, you have references to murder, torture, rape of women, men, and even babies. Folks, this is not okay. It's not okay. And by the way, let's go through some more emails. Why don't we? Let's just get it all out there that we can. Here's another email between Epstein and allegedly his brother. It says, Jeffrey Epstein writes, Paris with Woody Allen? The brother responds, for less pedophile convention, ? Epstein responds, I think pedophile is plural, and he spells it a different way. There's references, of course, various emails with the words pizza and grape soda being mentioned 911 times throughout these latest released documents. They love their numbers, don't they? 9/11. Again, very interesting, folks. Very interesting to me. I hate reading this to you, but we need to understand that, again, there's not just one man implicated in this, in these evil, sordid acts. This rot runs very deep. Did you see that Zoran Mamdani's mother is also in a lot of these pictures? With Epstein, with Gates, with Ghislaine, Bezos, Clinton. And there's pictures of him as a young child with these people. So obviously he's compromised. His connections to the elite are obviously there. Right, the ones that he pretends to hate so much. By the way, I told you he just reads the script. He smiles, he reads the script, he says what you want to hear. And the Dems eat it right up. It's, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Again, I was shocked to see, well, I wasn't shocked, but, I saw that one email saying Trump is compromised by Israel and Jared Kushner is the brains of the operation. Obviously, that explains some things, certainly our foreign policy as of late. Then again, you have Rubio being mentioned as the first one behind the Steele dossier that Hillary Clinton purchased and pushed against Donald Trump in Russiagate. Can you believe that? Again, thank God Pam Bondi has never arrested anyone for Russiagate. We'd have no Secretary of State, no National Security Advisor, no Viceroy to Venezuela or Cuba. God, that'd be horrible for Rubio, wouldn't it? How devastating that would be. I do want to talk about the legislative side of all this. This is in CNBC, by the way. And they're talking about, this is Khanna and Thomas Massie. And they're both thinking and considering, of course, having a push for possible impeachments and even holding Pam Bondi in contempt for her lack of action on all this. And again, we still have not been given any explanation as to why this was all not released. All the files, that's what the legislation said, that all the files of this should be released on December 19th. On January 3rd, we were supposed to get that explanation by law. And of course, we know January 3rd, we go into Venezuela, we capture Maduro, bring him to the United States on bogus gun charges. No shock there. There hasn't been any explanation as to why we haven't been given everything. And again, if there is nobody that is guilty And if Epstein is dead and Maxwell is in jail, who are you covering up for? Why are there any redactions? It doesn't make any sense. Now, I do want to say one thing, too, about what we're seeing right now. Some of the victims of this atrocity have come out and spoke out against this. And as a group, they spoke with MS Nobody Cares. And they said, once again, survivors are having their names and identifying information exposed, while the men who abused us remain hidden and protected. That is outrageous. As survivors, we should never be the ones named, scrutinized, and re-traumatized, while Epstein enablers continue to benefit from secrecy. This is a betrayal of the very people this process is supposed to serve, is what they said in a statement. And again, I find the first sentence remarkable. While the men who abused us remain hidden and protected. Notice I didn't say the man, that'd be Epstein, he's supposed to be the one that takes, all the guilt. But the men. So, as Assistant Attorney General, or as Attorney General Pam Bondi, if you're hearing that, wouldn't you say to yourself, okay, these women are saying there were men who were abusing them in different ways. And we have emails talking about this, of which, of course, they have full access to. We don't have the full access. Wouldn't that be enough to get you to go, okay, we need to bring in these victims. We need to sit them down. We need to get their testimony. When they met Epstein, how they met Epstein, who they met in these various locations. What happened to them? What did they see happening to other people? Whom else did they see doing this? Wouldn't that be the way to build a case? I mean, if this was any other situation, this would be the way to go about it. Yet we're being told nothing about this. We're not even told this is even happening, which again makes this all the more bizarre. And again, I have to shake my head about this because this is absolutely ridiculous. And, by the way, I thought it was hilarious, too. The film Melania, the documentary about her life, came out this weekend. And the Hollywood filmmaker that produced this and directed it was Brett Ratner, right? The guy who does Rush Hour. And he's in some of these photo dumps, too. You can't make this up. Again, he's pictured with Epstein and it looks like two other women, or at least females, on the couch with them. Their faces have been redacted. And Ratner, as we know, has been accused of sexual misconduct back in 2017 by multiple women. So let me understand this. You have Brett Ratner, who's been accused of sexual misconduct. Accused, right? He's not been found guilty, but he's been accused, okay? And he's sitting on a couch with Jeffrey Epstein, who allegedly has done lots to sexually assault many young women. And yet we don't think there's any connection there, that he's going to be on his best behavior when he's hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein on this secluded island or these locations. It says here that Ratner was pictured in previous Epstein dump posing with a shirtless Jean-Luc Brunel, a French modeling agent who died by suicide in his jail cell in 2022. Brunel was charged with raping a child. Folks, I mean, if this doesn't make you, shake your head or roll your eyes, like what is going on here with our Justice Department? This has got to stop. This is the last thing I'll say about this before we move on. This has got to stop. We've got to get to the bottom of this. We've got to hold our politicians, our bureaucracy, our appointed officials to a higher standard than this. Because no one is buying this. Let me just say this. Nobody is buying this nonsense. There's nobody else implicated in this. That there's nobody else guilty. And by the way, I saw another picture of one of our presidents in a boat with a well-known film actor, a film star, with a young child in the front of the boat. And I'm told it's not AI. But this is all very alarming. This is all very disgusting. And this has got to stop. And I think the biggest part about this, too, Besides the horrific things that probably took place, absolutely, by various people, the one thing that's rarely mentioned is why was Jeffrey Epstein's various houses, his mansions, the rooms in these houses, why were they all bugged with recording devices? That seems a bit odd to me, doesn't it to you folks? Why would he have recording devices in these various locations? To implicate himself? To look at himself? God only knows. Wouldn't that be interesting if you actually looked at a lot of this video recording, this audio recording, and got to the bottom of it that way? Obviously, we seized all of it. Are there any statements on that? Why haven't we been told about what's found on that? Again, I'm so disgusted with our Justice Department. It's absolutely appalling to me, folks. This is the house of cards right here. And again, if our politicians, if our donor class, if our billionaire elite class, so-called, are abusing women and men and killing people, don't you think we should know about this? I mean, there's no other way for me to say this to you, folks. This is just the way it is. And this is very alarming to a T. I hope you would agree with me on this, that we obviously need to hold people accountable. And that's not happening right now. And again, it's disgusting to see this taking place. Oh, I know some of you wanted me to talk about Don Lemon today being arrested. Who the hell cares about Don Lemon, first of all? I'm looking at this Breitbart article. Disgraced former CNN anchor was arrested Thursday in L.A. And yes, of course, right away he's released without bail. Of course. There's no accountability whatsoever. Goes into a church, makes a fool of himself, which again is illegal, by the way. It's not a form of protest. Absolutely disgusting. Is anyone held accountable for anything they do anymore? I don't think so. I don't think so. All right, let's move on, folks. This in Just the News says U.S. approves more than $6.5 billion in arms sale to Israel, drawing ire for Democrats in the Congress. Let's give them another reason to shut down the government, shall we? Why not? Why not? I mean, we're already faced with shutting the government down right now. Look at this. It says the U.S. government has approved nearly $7 billion in potential arms sales to Israel right now. That has generated backlash from the Democrats in D.C., accusing the administration of sidelining Congress. Well, no kidding. We already give them $6.8 billion every single year, appropriated by Congress. Now we've got the U.S. Department of Defense Security Cooperation Agency clearing 4 arms and equipment contracts to Israel, collectively valued at $6.6 to $6.7 billion. This is why we're broke. We're broke. There's no other way to say it to you. We're broke. And yet we're beefing up another nation's army? We can't even beef up our own army, for God's sakes. We can't even pay for it. We're at over $38 trillion in debt, and we're worried about giving another country military aid. It's amazing to me. Yet we have no money for our cities. We have no money for our schools. We have no money for anything else. But we always have money for a war, don't we, folks? It says here that the agreement includes Israel purchasing 30 AH-64 Apache helicopters with weapons, sensors, and support gear, as well as about 3,200 joint light tactical vehicles and related support equipment to beef up Israel's ground mobility and logistics. Well, why? So they can continue to go to war with Lebanon, inside Gaza, anywhere else? God only knows. Look at this. It says Washington historically provides at least $3.8 billion annually in federal military financing to Israel, a key ally in the volatile Middle East. Gee, I can only wonder why that is. So that the Trump administration has blatantly ignored longstanding congressional prerogatives while also refusing to engage Congress on critical questions about the next steps in Gaza and the broader U.S.-Israel policy. Well, what's the policy? We're going to bring Netanyahu on the Board of Peace, so-called, where we have Jared Kushner, who's called the brains of the operation, Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio, on this Board of Peace, while 0 Palestinians sit on this board. Again, how could you bring a guy onto the Board of Peace who has killed over 73,000 people that are not Hamas, that are just Palestinians inside Gaza, of which 83% of it, and counting, is now lying in ruins. Does that make sense to anybody? And we're going to reward them with more military aid, more weaponry, more equipment, more contracts? I don't understand this, folks. Again, it's shocking to me. Since this so-called ceasefire, which really never took place, by the way, some 500 Palestinians have been said to have been killed. That means Israel is still attacking the Palestinians inside the Gaza Strip. Has Trump said anything about this? Has he said a word about this? Is he going to ask them to stop? Is anyone in the Hill supposed to tell them to stop? Because we haven't heard a damn thing about this. So again, this just goes to show you who's running our foreign policy. It ain't Donald Trump, folks. I'll just tell it to you as it is. It isn't Donald Trump. And why Mike Johnson in the House has not refuted this, well, again, why would he? He's an arch-Zionist too. But this is going to upset a lot of people. And it should, because again, if we're allocating money, that has got to go through the Congress. It can't just come from the executive branch. Now, House Foreign Affairs Committee ranking member Jeffrey Meeks is among the Democrats criticizing the timing and the process about this. Well, again, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this at a time when we should not be engaging in war, but we should be engaging in peace? Now, if Israel wants to beef up their military, that's up to them. They're a sovereign country. That's up to them. Why are we giving them and allocating this much money? $6.6 billion to $6.7 billion in military aid. Again, it's mind-boggling, folks. It doesn't make any sense, especially in a time when we can barely fund our own government. Listen to this. This is in the Hill. It says GOP faces divide on ICE reforms as House struggles to end shutdown. No kidding. So now Republicans are now battling another government shutdown over what reforms to make to the ICE and customs enforcement and other federal agencies as the House gets to set a vote on legislation to end a partial government shutdown triggered by the deaths of 2 U.S. citizens in Minneapolis. Now, the House is expected to vote on Tuesday on legislation approved by the U.S. Senate at the end of the last week, after Democrats in the lower chamber said that they would not agree to provide votes for the measure to pass under suspension of House rules. That would require a 2/3 majority vote. Now, while Johnson is confident that the bill will pass the House on Tuesday, he faces challenges in rallying his party around the rule vote, given the tiny majority, which is, I believe, 218 right now. It's a razor-thin majority. They have nothing. So if you have any Republicans that deflect, you have no passage. That's the way it's going to be. That's what happens when you lose elections, folks. This is the way it's going. That's the way we continue to lose these special elections. Now, this passage of this package would fund much of the government through September, ending a partial government shutdown that began on Saturday. But the bill will only provide a 2-week stopgap for the Department of Homeland Security. That's their target right now. All right? That's up and center for the Democrats. This is how they're gaining leverage. So this means that lawmakers would only have a few days to negotiate a list of immigration enforcement reforms by the Democrats. So now some of the Republicans are really hoping to stop this backlash. But it looks like Senate conservatives are accusing their colleagues of being cowed by the Democrats. They want them to instead go on offense by accusing Democrats of undermining law enforcement and, of course, pandering to their liberal base. So here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. And by the way, I'm not opposed to ICE and reform happening right now, or, obviously the due process that should be there. That should always be there. I think that's obviously something that we obviously need to talk about. But the idea that we're going to cut funding is another thing. That's a completely different scenario. You have Susan Collins saying she'll look at their ideas. Okay. She wants to talk about de-escalation training for new ICE agents. Again, ICE should not be interacting with the public. They shouldn't be. That's not what they're supposed to do. Their job is to detain illegal aliens and get them ready for deportation. That's their only job. They shouldn't be dealing with crowd control or coming in contact with American citizens. That is not their job. That's the job of local and state police in a given jurisdiction. But look at this. It says the strong public reaction to the deaths of Good and Preddy emboldened Democrats to take a hard line against the Department of Homeland Security appropriations package, which then delayed a major funding package and triggered the partial government shutdown. So now we have some Republicans who said they're open to the demands by Democrats to stop roving ICE patrols, to require search warrants for immigration enforcement officers, and to establish a code of conduct governing use of force. Again, they need to follow the Constitution. I said this to you before. Why they aren't following the Constitution is beyond me. They should always have a warrant before they enter somebody's home, citizen or non-citizen. They should just be going into locations, asking people to show them their papers. That's ridiculous. There are ways to go about this the right way, and there are ways not to. But anyway you look at it, the reason why they have to go into homes, by and large, is because the sanctuary states or their sanctuary cities are not cooperating with ICE. That's a big problem here. They're going after people that have been previously arrested for various crimes, and now they have to go through the city to find these people. That's a problem. This could not, obviously this doesn't have to happen this way if these various municipalities cooperated with ICE in the first place. So now you have them going, door to door, looking for people, and they should have to do this. They should know exactly who they're targeting, of course, in many regards, but a lot of this doesn't have to happen if these jurisdictions just handed these people over when they were first arrested. And why they're released back on the streets, I have no idea. I have no clue about this. Since the shooting of Renee Nicole Good, just on the streets of Minneapolis, they found over 1,500 criminals, illegal aliens. Why are they back on the streets? It makes no sense to anyone listening. How do you release an illegal alien back out onto the streets? And Jacob Fry gets up and says they're his neighbor and what have you. It's ridiculous. The job of ICE is being thwarted by the local and state governments in these blue cities, in these blue states. That's what it comes down to. Again, I'm opposed to the ICE sweeps of just asking people for their papers 100%. I'm opposed to entering a home without a warrant. Absolutely 100%. There needs to be due process, and there needs to be constitutional law followed. That is the law of the land. ICE does not have any obligation to do otherwise. And if they are, they need to be stopped. But this idea we're just going to stop this enforcement, we're going to stop the funding, is another thing that's absolutely ridiculous. So again, I'm all for constitutional law. I'm not up to prohibiting ICE officers from wearing masks, though. Why do I say that to you? Because they're being doxxed and they're being told they're doxxed. There's people holding signs in these hostile groups of people around various ICE buildings saying, let's dox ICE. In this day and age, do you want to start doxing people? And again, I know it's a bad look. I understand that. But there's a reason for it. Now, that being said, they should have ID on them present at all times, especially when they are detaining somebody. They should have papers with them as to why they're detaining somebody. That's the rule of law. So again, if they're going to wear masks, they have to have ID present on them to identify themselves. Because again, this just plays into the Democratic role. Oh, look, these are masked people. They're just going into houses. They're taking people. And then you get the rhetoric coming out of people like the Attorney General of Arizona saying, stand your ground is fine. You could shoot at federal agents if they enter your house. And this is the rhetoric that's being pushed forward to the rioters, I should say. that are becoming more and more hostile in the streets. And we're seeing it take place in Los Angeles. We're seeing it take place in Minneapolis and across the country right now. And these are the people you're going to stand down to? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to work. Let's move on to Iran, folks. This is another very, very important topic that we've got to discuss because that is right around the corner. And I saw over the weekend that we pulled out one of our USS carriers out of the Arabian, which I thought was very good. I thought that was wise. But make no mistake, this is an imminent operation that's going to happen very soon, folks. Very, very soon. And the U.S. is now posed to strike Iran, is what Israel 365 News is telling us. Let's look at this article. Let's break this down a little bit here. It says here that a senior American military official briefed leadership in a key military Middle East ally that President Donald Trump said that could authorize an attack on Iran as early as Sunday. Okay. Now, Dropsite News reported on Friday that the planned strikes would target nuclear, which I thought we destroyed. So I don't know why they're saying we're targeting nuclear sites. They said we demolished all of them. Obliterated them, I think was the actual term. But nuclear sites, ballistic missile sites, and Iranian leadership itself. I think it's the later, not the former in all this. It says a former senior U.S. intelligence officer confirmed that the operation aims at regime change. This isn't about the nukes or the missile program. This is about the regime change. Well, no kidding. We know this. It's all about regime change, folks. It has nothing to do with anything else. It has nothing to do with the protests that took place. It has nothing to do with anybody that's been killed. It has to do with regime change. And we would know because we helped foment a lot of these violent riots that took place. Killing police officers, killing citizens, setting people on fire, setting buildings and cars on fire. That was people that we helped orchestrate to do that. And it all fell upon itself because, well, Iran, smartly enough, stopped all internet access. They took the phones from these people that were doing these illegal acts, and they all found very similar messages by a female Mossad agent, telling them where to go, what to say, what to destroy, what happens if you're arrested, what do you say? And it makes perfect sense. You even had Scott Bessent telling Maria Bartiromo in Davos at the World Economic Forum that this is all planned out well in advance to take down the Iranian rial, to destroy the currency. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to destroy it from inside out because they want regime change. And they're very brazen when they tell us these things. Now, Trump confirmed on Friday that he had given Iran a deadline to make a deal. Again, I don't know why Iran would trust the United States when we backed out of the deal last time and let Israel attack them ahead of the negotiations. What deal would they approve of, by the way? I think Iran would straight out reject it, even if they wanted to come and make a deal. Honestly, that's what I think. They're not going to do away with their missile program. They're not going to do away with any enrichment. Of course, there's medical needs they can use enrichment for of uranium. I don't see how they could come and approve any of this. I just don't see it happening. I believe they think, well, they know that this attack might come, and they said that they're ready for it. And if any attack does occur anywhere on Iranian soil, they are going to respond in kind. So it's not going to be like last time where they let us destroy an empty building. We let them destroy an empty building, and then we call it quits. This is going to be an all-out war if this takes place. And it will have catastrophic economic consequences if it does happen. What do I mean by that? They've already said if any part of Iran is attacked by the United States, every single oil refinery in the Middle East will be struck. That would have catastrophic consequences for the world economy. They also said they'll destroy every single oil field. Again, massive consequences to the economy. Not just to the Iranian economy, the world economy as we know it. They said they would shut down the Strait of Hormuz. That's a big problem. because that cuts off 25% of the global oil trade. Another major blow to the world economy. They said they'll also hit U.S. military bases, and they will also hit Israel as well. They know what's going on here, folks. They know. The Iranians are not stupid. They know exactly what's going on. And by the way, in this article, it says here too, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is actively encouraging the attack and has reportedly assured President Trump that Israel can help install a new Western-friendly government in Iran. This is the exact thing that they want. They want a government that is going to play ball with Israel, that's not going to oppose them. Iran is the last holdout. And again, you're seeing shifts in the Iraqi new elections that are moving away from being Israel-friendly. We saw the overturning of Bashar al-Assad. Now that is a stateless government right now. I mean, it's being run by ISIS, by and large. Lebanon's government has failed. You're seeing the Yemeni government also overturned. A lot's happening. And the last holdout is Iran. If they can get Iran to flip, install Pahlavi, which I don't think the Iranian people want, I'll just be honest with you, they know that they would have access to do whatever they want in the region. They would have nobody to oppose them. Now, one of the things I learned over the weekend, too, by the way, I did some research on this. One of the demands the United States asked for was that Iran stop funding any of these proxy groups in the region. Okay, that seems reasonable, right? Hezbollah, we talk about the Yemeni Houthis. We talk about, obviously, Hamas and other groups that are funded by mostly the Gulf Arab states. They're not even necessarily funded by Iran. But Hezbollah is, okay? And Hezbollah also helped Syria in many regards. Well, here's the thing. We look at things like what Hezbollah has done since 1982, all right? Since in this 44-year span, Hezbollah killed roughly maybe 5,000 American troops in the region. 5,000 in roughly 45 years. Okay, obviously we don't want that. We don't want people killed. But in a 45-year span of time, we have 5,000 casualties, Israeli and American alike. Look at what we have done in the region. We can look no further than Iraq and look at over 500,000 people killed in the region, just in one country. You look at Obama trying to overthrow Syria. You look at, again, what we've done in Yemen, among other places. Again, what took place in Lebanon. People getting killed in Lebanon by Israel. The numbers show a different picture, don't they, folks? So, again, when we look at, these concessions that we're telling Iran to do, we've also got to look at our own behavior, too. If Iran wants regime change, if the people of Iran want regime change, that's up to them. But if we think we're going to install another puppet government and everything's going to be just fine, look no further than Ukraine. And the Maidan Revolution in 2014 under Obama. Just take a look. Go look at what happened in Libya in 2011. Go take a look. If we think that these have no consequences. These regime changes we continually find ourselves in time and time again. And I'll ask you, the listener, where has anything positive come from any regime change we've conducted? My answer is probably nowhere at all. Again, just wanted to share that with you. So expect that war, folks. That's what's being touted. I told you before, it's going to come. It'll probably come on a weekend when the markets are closed. And it seems like, again, Trump is being advised to go in on this with absolutely no pretext whatsoever. Iran does not pose any type of risk to our national security, our sovereignty. Their missiles cannot reach us. So again, I have no idea why would we go and do this right now. Why would we not seek peace instead of more war? There's another shocking video that I saw really a couple days ago, but this came out in the Gateway Pundit just the other day. It said illegal aliens arrested after opening fire on Texas Freeway. Well, let's see who these Grammy Award winners are. Well, two of the illegal aliens, Anthony Acevedo, Jose Alarcon Sanchez were arrested after they fired their weapons from the Margaret McDermott Bridge on New Year's Eve. The third illegal alien, Anderson Ders Lara, was arrested after he opened fire on a Texas family in a road rage incident back in November. Yeah, well, the illegal aliens then posted their shocking footage to social media because they're such geniuses. Two of the men have been arrested in connection with the viral New Year's Eve gunfire incident on the downtown bridge, while a third man has been charged in a separate road rage shooting involving children, according to the Dallas police. Well. The investigation after the social media videos were released, worldwide, by the way, showed the individuals firing from this bridge on Interstate 30. Detectives recovered more than 100 shell casings from the scene, just west of the city's downtown core. So, we have all this rhetoric coming out right now. This is why I bring this up to you, by the way. You know, I don't just tell you this just to tell this to you. There's a reason for it. How are illegal aliens having access to these guns? And by the way, they're automatic weapons because I watched them shoot these firearms. They're just, shooting callously onto an interstate freeway where people can obviously get hurt. One of them shot at a family, as you well know. But then we have people like the Democratic mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, going viral saying that every single human on earth has a legal right to come to the United States. Now, this, folks, is stupidity for several reasons. One, of course, violates federal immigration law, which states that anyone hoping to become an immigrant can't just arrive on America's shores, but obviously first must file for a visa program or an asylum claim while still in their own country of origin. Go through the, obviously, legal routes, the protocols, the applications, the interviews before even being allowed to come to the United States. And yet we have an American governor making these outlandish comments saying that anybody in the world should just be able to come to the United States. You have the legal right to do so. Well, what do you think that does? It encourages more negative behavior. No one should be shocked about this. But here we go, time and time again, this is what's being touted in the United States from the left. Violate federal immigration law. It's okay. Just show up. That's what Biden said, right? Just show up. Come on now, right? They showed up with shirts. Biden let us in. And the idiot let everybody in. All 12 to 20 million of them. But, that's okay for the American left, right? They don't care. They don't mind it. That's exactly what they want. In fact, many other people want this as well. Who might some of these people be? Well, for the few people that watched the Grammys this weekend, here's what Billie, I think her name is Eilish. I don't know much about her, I'll be honest with you. I don't listen to this kind of music, but this is what she said upon receiving her award. You'd think she would, thank her audience, thank her team of people that write her songs, but instead she had this to say. Take a listen.
I honestly don't feel like I need to say anything, but that no one is illegal on stolen land.
And the idiots clap on, clap on, and clap on. Well, let me ask you this. Is she right? Is Billie Eilish right? Is America just simply stolen land, therefore everyone can do what Michelle Wu says and come one, come all, just show up, don't worry about it? Well, let's look at it. I did a little bit of research for you. Why not? Let's take her claim that America is just simply stolen land and therefore everybody has a right to come here. Just to America, of course, nowhere else in the world. What happened in America was completely unique, of course. Nowhere else was any land ever stolen. Okay, let's take her claim at face value. Let's think of the territories of the original 13 colonies. Well, we know that obviously it was a military victory over Great Britain. And of course, as the result, the Treaty of Paris of 1783 took place, granting us all the land, the air, the water, and what have you, east of the Mississippi River, south of the Canadian Territory, and north of the Florida Republic. Okay, so that land was won via a war where the colonists were already living. So it was not stolen land. They already lived on the land. And again, we also achieved the Northwest Ordinance. That would be the territories of Ohio, Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin. That would later become U.S. states. But we established the 13 colonies, which would become the first 13 states of this nation. So it's an 0-1 for Billie Eilish on the eastern seaboard. That land was not stolen. That was won. Let's go on. The Vermont annexation of 1791. The independent Vermont Republic voted themselves to join the United States. And through a congressional approval, and of course, statehood occurred soon thereafter. Not stolen land. 0-2 for old Billy. Okay. Louisiana Purchase. Notice I said purchase. So we bought it. Who do we buy it from? We bought it from France for $15 million. Doubling the size of the United States. Future president, I should say, James Monroe negotiated. And we got parts of Minnesota, Montana, North and South Dakota, Texas, Wyoming, Idaho, and the full states of Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. We bought it, folks. Land was legally bought from France. The Treaty of Cession was then signed. 1803. 0-3 for Billy, unfortunately for her. Let's go into West Florida. Okay, 1810. U.S. settlers rebelled against Spain and again created the Republic of West Florida, which was then granted to the United States to annex the region. In 1819, and later in effect in 1821, the U.S. then purchased the territory of East and West Florida from Spain under the Adams-Onis Treaty for, I think it was $5 million, if I'm not mistaken. So again, we purchased this territory from Spain diplomatically, and it was agreed upon in a treaty with Spain to take this land. Not stolen territory. 0-4 for Billy. Okay. How about the Texas annexation? 1845. The independent Republic of Texas, not Mexico, voted to join the United States, which prompted the Congress to pass a joint resolution admitting Texas into the Union. Okay? This was voluntary. It was by treaty. It was approved by Congress. 0-5 for Billy, who sounds dumber and dumber as I speak to you further about this stupid woman. And of course, how we acquired this land. All right. Let's go on to the Oregon Territory. Not waste any time. 1846. Once claimed territories by Spain and Russia alike, but then they relinquished via treaties to the United States, to Great Britain, to decide who owned the territory. Well, the two countries agreed in the Oregon Treaty of 1846 that the 49th parallel would divide and serve as the boundary between our territory, the United States, and, of course, what Great Britain owned in the north, which would later be Canada. Okay. So there you go. That's how that was decided. Okay. So that land was then granted to the United States. Again, not stolen. 0-6, Billy. Not doing too well. All right. Let's move on to the Mexican Cession, 1848. Over land disputes in the Texas area. President Polk sent down some advisors to figure out what was going on. They decided to fire on Americans. Now, some people say it was prompted to have that happen so we can go to war with Mexico. Either way, we ended up going to war with Mexico. Mexico then loses the war. They ceded the lands of California, Nevada, Utah, and of course parts of Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and a little bit of Wyoming. Even after winning, we still paid them $15 million for that land, and it was agreed upon in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. So again, not only did we win in this military victory, but in return, we didn't even keep all of the land of Mexico, which we could have. We only kept half of it, and we paid them for it. And by the way, every single person that was of Mexican citizenry was granted instant U.S. citizenry, folks. That never happened anywhere else in the world, just so we're all clear on this. So, yeah, no one's land was just stolen. No one was just kicked out. They were granted instant U.S. citizenship in all these areas. And by the way, there was only about 100,000 people over this vast landscape, which again is a massive part of the southwestern United States. And again, most of them were indigenous Indians, not Mexican citizens. Just so we're clear on that. When people lie to you and say, oh, well, it was Mexico and Mexico was here. Well, yeah, they were. There were Mexicans that were in this area, but they instantly became American citizens. Not stolen land, 0 and 7. Not too good, Billy. Not too good. All right, let's move on to Alaska, 1867. Seward's Folly, or Seward's Icebox, however you want to look at it. Purchased from Russia for $7.2 million diplomatically. Again, not stolen land. Later became a state. 0 and 8 for the pop singer. Maybe she should stick to singing songs that are written for her. I don't know. Finally, let's go on to the Hawaiian Territory. 1898, there was an overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy by U.S.-backed residents. It was then later annexed by the Congress in the Newlands Resolution. So one can argue it was a political overthrow, but nonetheless, it was an upheaval, right? So there you go. That's how all this land was acquired. And we can look at other territories. We can look at the Spanish-American War, 1898. Spain gave us the, territories of Puerto Rico, Guam, the Philippines, and the Treaty of Paris, of 1898. We gave them $20 million in return. We can look at the American Samoan Islands, 1904, the cession treaties with local chiefs granting us access to the land, calling it an American territory. The U.S. Virgin Islands, 1917, purchased from Denmark for $25 million. So time and time again, we are again ceding with the various countries in these areas. And there you have it, folks. We have Billie Eilish, who is clueless, baseless, lied to us, and of course lied to the 8.8 million people who unfortunately watched the Grammys yesterday evening, which was down from last year's 15.4 million viewers, down 9% from the previous year already. So we're seeing a decline of people watching this garbage. No one should take these people seriously. By the way, how many people that are illegal does Billie Eilish know? How many does she come in contact every day with their armed security? Does anybody know? Are any of these other multimillionaires who are clapping like seals when she said that stupid line? Notice they never say anything about Rachel Morin's name, Jocelyn Dungery, Lake and Riley's name. Never uttered a word about these women who have been killed by illegal aliens, whom they love so much but know nothing about, apparently. Yep, folks, it's more ignorance coming out of Hollywood. Not a shock. Billie Eilish is an absolute idiot. Share that with other people. I did say that. I do stand by that. Okay. We got 2 minutes remaining, folks. Let's see if I can get through one more thing really quickly. It says here in the New York Post, the Democrat Socialist of America now vow to hurt moderate Democrats. I didn't know any existed, by the way. We were told Abigail Spanberger was a moderate, and she's just about to the left of Gavin Newsom, we're figuring out as of late. But here's what they're pledging. Dems that do not back abolish ICE plan is not enough to just being not Trump. They've got to go full in communist, folks. This is the way it's got to work, and this is the motif you're going to see going forward with these socialists who are self-described vowing to hurt moderate Democrats as time goes on. This is what they want to do. It's not enough that they are against President Trump. They have to show full support that they're not going to follow federal immigration law. Now, for many of us, this is, again, very shocking. We don't have the Democrat Party basically just hates America. That's what it comes down to. There's nothing else in between. This is whom they are. They hate immigration laws. They are vowing now to earn their vote. They've got to be vocal about destroying the nation from within. And the leader said, no. We've got to make the midterms Things are going to get better, but we're not going to vote for people who are quote unquote normies, which whatever the hell that means. I don't really know what that means. But this is who these people are. This is who they want to focus on. It says here that the Democratic Party, the mainstream normie establishment Dems, we're not just going to give you back power to do the same absolute nothing you've been doing. If you want us to vote for you, not being Trump is not enough. You've got to go full-on Marxist, folks. Full-on Marxist. You've got to be anti-ICE. You've got to vote against ICE. You've got to work to abolish ICE. And they say it's violent fascism. ICE is a violent and dangerous agency. We need to call for the abolishment of ICE. That's what they're saying, folks. This is what they want. And will they get it? I think so. I think they'll get it. I think the Democrats are on board with that, especially the younger generation. This is what they want. They want to get rid of ICE. They want to get rid of immigration laws and your sovereignty altogether. Folks, thank you again for being here today. I appreciate you so much. Hope you learned something in the show. Hope you'll share it with other people. Available on all streaming apps just for you. Make sure you're keeping your mind sharp, your body strong, staying prepped with food, water, ammo, money, gold, tools, anything to be self-sufficient. Folks, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Till then, be good, stay busy, God bless.